Welcome, everyone. Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, I want to talk about, the myth and legend of Nikola Tesla. Again, like everything in life, no matter who I investigate, and of course, people are never looking for the gnosis of it or the truth of the situation. They want to live in a fantasy. I know something. You're wrong. I did some goofball research and have proven all the myths about people. This is the way the world works, and there's reasons for this in the bigger picture. And if you really are a person of gnosis understanding, you'll understand why all this happens. And one of those people, similar to people like Bruce Lee, and I don't want to give any discount to the genius and thought capacities of everyone. So, but I mean, the point is these people are far from perfect and far from the legends that they talk about. But the minute you start bringing in truth and the facts of the situations, people don't like that. And then they assume that you're negative about the whole thing. Certainly, Bruce Lee was a fantastic martial artist, has been called a fantastic technician. Was he a good fighter? We'll never know. He didn't want to fight. And I can understand that on many levels. If you win, you're just a braggadocio. Yeah, well, I told you I was right. If you lose, you're just a complete loser. So there was no value in Bruce Lee fighting to prove anything to anybody. There was no money back then, as there probably isn't today, in becoming a martial arts champion. So what is the value of it? It's a minor issue if you want to be a movie star. So the whole idea is that there's a lot of people that are movie stars, that are martial artists, that haven't won great titles. People like to discount everybody and not give them any validation, like people like Van Damme. Van Damme has a long list of championship wins behind him in his country of Belgium. So you can never really win out there. If someone doesn't like you, they're going to criticize you, etc. So this is just the way it goes, but that's the nature of things out there. So, but one of the people who was very, very over-exaggerated, and in continuing picking this up in my overrated series, at the top of all this has to really be Nikola Tesla. Now, Nikola Tesla was a very strange, odd, basically mentally ill man, who certainly contributed to science kind of from the back door, wanted to take credit for a lot of stuff that he didn't really invent, and of course had some very fanciful theories. But really nothing came to manifestation past certain levels. And again, he's given way too much credit for doing things and way too much credit of being suppressed. And the point is, he got an awful lot of money. Not only from people, how are you got a good invention? You try and talk to the head person now. You try and get to the big investors out there, to Bill Gates, to Elon Musk, and see if they're going to give you lots of money and support you. He was able to do that. He got to the top financiers, J.P. Morgan, Edison, etc., and was able to talk to them personally. And he planned this by working for Edison Corporation in Paris, where he then had a letter of introduction from that division of his company. And you got to remember, this is places where they don't have internet, telephones. All this stuff has not happened yet, so everything would have to be done by mail, and this would be very difficult. So walking to Edison's company, where he was working all day, and giving them a letter was a way of him getting to physically talk to the big shot. Do that with the people of today. Try and get into talking to Steve Jobs when he was alive, or Billy Gates. Good luck. But he was able to do that because of the time and place. And this is a time when electricity was just getting started, streetlights, etc. And there was a great thirst for anything new. What did Tesla have in his pocket? Well, I'll tell you what Tesla had in his pocket. Tesla had in his pocket, which he came from a middle-class family. He wasn't poor. His father was basically an Orthodox priest, which is interesting. And ironically or interestingly enough, it was his mother who was the electronic tinkerer, the person who made things and invented things, which is rare to see. But actually, his mother is where you could say got that information. Probably he got his wacky mysticism from his religious father, which is interesting. So this is all part of the of his background, whatever that means. He did, I think I misspoke on a previous video, he did get some education and did apparently quite well with that, but ended up leaving it there and having problems with his instructors. But he had a lot of mental problems. First of all, he grew up that everything he saw, he couldn't differentiate between reality and fiction. Now, this is very dangerous. This is called schizophrenia, and they put you in hospitals and put you on medications. And if he was around today, he'd be in a hospital somewhere and not be doing what he's doing. And this is a problem with anybody who's kind of different and weird. Well, they consider you strange to begin with. The dumb bunkers, well, I forget who's the head of that. Michael Shermer, the head of the, who has I think a degree or a doctorate in psychology, believes that people that believe in weird stuff are mentally ill and they should be on medications and they should even be hospitalized. That's the dark side of the dumb bunkers. And he has said this on his different podcasts or whatever you want to call those babblings of morons talks. So this is the real problem of it, and this is something that doesn't fit in society, and he was quite weird. He also had a lot of other problems as a person. So the point is this mystical wizard genius doesn't fit him. And it really, if you look at his career, he really didn't achieve anything. He was the ancient or old time Elon Musk, who hasn't done anything either. He took an electric car company over, including the name of it, and went in there and put a lot of his money in it, which he had billions to throw into basically putting together a car that kind of is a computerized car that runs itself, that does all this stuff, if you're careful. And really, there's been no breakthroughs in any kind of things that have done in the electric car market. And he was able to get a lot of delusional wealthy people to buy his overpriced junk. I mean, the whole idea is the powertrain, not the fact that you have all these gadgets in your car. And the powertrain is nothing new, and his batteries are nothing new. Matter of fact, they're toxic. It's a bad way to go because he really couldn't make sophisticated systems like hydrogen or even a great hybrid. No, not Tesla. I can't do that. Ooh. I made all this money that was given to me from my financier brother, and they paid me millions for a website. The guy has no engineering background or anything else. So we have to understand that as we move into these areas. This is a carbon copy of what constantly is repetitive in this world, which nothing ever changes. Does people get that? Nothing ever changes. So this is just the Nikola Tesla of his time without the brains. So the whole idea is that we have to look into this. So the other thing, of course, is that without getting into a lot of details of life, so I'm just going to throw things out there, just so little bits and pieces. I'm not sure that the exact times, dates, and none of that means nobody really cares. So the whole idea is that he also, at this time, wanting to further his education, and there's a contradictory of whether he was thrown out and what he did, but he got money to go to a top school in, I believe it's Croatia at the time, that area. Daddy got him the money. Relatives did it. There's all sorts of things that he had a lot of step-ups that other people didn't. And what did he do with these opportunities? Did he stay in school and get his paper with the name on it? You know, me smart. Did he do that? No, he took his money and he gambled it away. No, he had a very difficult problem with gambling, which is kind of interesting, but does fit this kind of semi-retarded reality that we see, this kind of what would they call that today, where these people are going to, but the point is that in a lot of ways he was semi-retarded, or autistic, I guess I could say. So he was kind of autistic. He was a very odd person. And of course, you would think that odd people are going to come up with odd science, and it is to a certain extent, but he was a great fantasist. He couldn't even tell reality from fantasy, which is a serious problem, particularly as Zeus. So the gossip goes. How much of this is true? I don't know. I don't know how you can function like that. But basically, he blew all his money there. He was able to get back. He ends up without, jump ahead. He ends up working for Edison's corporate office in Paris. And you got to remember all this stuff at this particular times in the early 1900s. Anybody that had background in this and had any information, they did have some formal training, was jumped on to work in this new field of electricity. But there was an awful lot going on in Europe in general. And this is where things also get very amiss. And we hear about these things only if they come from the German Arab perspective, who wants to run their flag up saying they've done everything. So if there wasn't anything coming out of that, you don't hear about it. The British, the Italians, etc. And this whole idea that, Tesla's been giving credit to on pretty much every idea he ever had was already being worked on in Europe, particularly in Italy and in England. So these are the places that everybody was already working on things. And much of what he did were copies of what was going on in Europe already. And he wanted to then make his own patents by varying already established designs. This is so typical, and particularly typical of countries like the German Arabs and the Japanese, etc., who file all these new patents, but they're not new tech. It's the whole idea there's slight variations of old tech. There's nothing new being invented there. And this is so typical of so many things out there. People will look at the patents being registered and say that's all this new. No, they're not new stuff. It's just the same old thing. It's a handle with a variation. It's whatever it is. It's a hinge, but it's slightly different. So you patent that. So the whole idea is you're coming up with hybrids of original things, and that's pretty much what Nicola, the wizard Tesla, did. The imaginary wizard. I like to use the term wizard because it reminds, or maybe you should call him Nicola, Harry Potter, Tesla, because it's kind of a fictional character, not people who are really doing things. So again, he was a great showman. He was a weirdo. He wouldn't stay in any room that wasn't divisible by 3. So, like room 9. Yeah, that's divisible by 3. 3 goes not 3 times. And so many things like that. He was compulsive. There's so many things he wouldn't do. He'd walk around buildings and stuff 3 times. And he had all these superstitions and other things, which, of course, we think men of science wouldn't do. Of course, you have an awful lot of scientists who are actually believe in the boogeyman in the sky. And they are tops in their fields in terms of being recognized when they should be thrown out of the industry. But so that's the kind of goofballness you got in science. Yeah, here's the proof we have here from the colloidal. We ran things together at a high speed and they went pa-poop, like a cartoon. And we discovered the poop that came out of there. Here it is. These are the facts, people. Excuse me, I gotta go pray to the invisible guy in the sky. So if you want to know goofy, at least Tesla had ideas. These people have nothing. So the whole idea is that, so he was a compulsive gambler. He made a lot of money. People think that he never was paid properly and everything else. He made one tragic mistake in his life because he was too ignorant to go out and get himself a lawyer. He certainly had money and everything else, and he should have talked to a lawyer. So he made sure the contracts that he got into were proper. But, the top people invested in him, Westinghouse, and so many of the other that escape my pea brain right now. And they were big supporters of him, while Edison, who had lots of money, and promised him some commissions, which, apparently he was promised by Edison $50,000 for a breakthrough in tech, and which wasn't really a breakthrough either. We're going to get into that as well. But the bottom line is that this apparently Edison said half joking. And I don't know, Tesla, because he was semi-retarded, took this as fact. I think Edison was probably joking at that time, a bad joke, but and certainly something he could afford. But you're talking about $50,000 in the 1920s, 30s, whenever that was probably equivalent to $500,000 today, maybe a few million. So it's not like Edison was going to take that out of his pocket and slap it on. Oh, I'm going to lunch today. Here's 50,000. That's a lot of money. Tesla took that. So he was very upset when he made a semi-breakthrough, and Edison refused to pay him. Edison was the person who really made the biggest mistake, and we'll talk about that as well. Being obnoxious and rich as he was, he didn't notice something that really made a lot more sense than his DC power. So Edison, so Nikola Tesla made this, so he walked them without any place to go, without any money, anything else. But because of his rep and his showmanship and the fact that you could get to people back then and they listened to you, apparently, as I said, try and do that today. You got a good invention, try and get a hold of any of these people. That he was sponsored by, I believe it was Westinghouse. And Westinghouse used to make appliances and everything else. I believe Westinghouse has turned into GE now. So, and they're still around and still doing very well. That is Edison's old company. Not Edison's, no, Westinghouse. Well, who knows? But the point is that these details, when you watch and do so much, it's hard to keep all of these into it. It really doesn't matter. But the bottom line is that a lot of money was put into Tesla's AC current, which eventually won the current battle. Not battle. It's amazing that Edison, the genius he was as well, or he was so arrogant. And of course, Edison didn't make a lot of inventions either. Most of the stuff he got from his employees, like he did with Tesla, and then he owned them. When you run a company and you hire engineers or people and they invent something, I mean, generally that goes to the company. I'm paying you, and you only invented it and were able to develop it because of my money. I own it. Now, whether you want to give that person a royalty or not is kind of up to the business agreement you have. I mean, after all, did that person who discovered that deserve anything more? Where is his money? Did he pay for the overhead, all the machines, all the other things that go into a business? People think that their services are worth so much in a business they've done nothing else but sit there and, I had this with people as well, think that it's because they work in a business for a little while, thinking that somehow they deserve a lot when they've done nothing. Where's your investment? Where's all that stuff? You didn't take any risk. And how much is risk worth? Risk is worth a lot. But nobody understands business, and it's always amusing to see that. They don't even understand the basics of business because people are too busy. People don't understand there's one side of the cash register, and that's you handing money to the guy on the other side. This is such a problematic situation with non-business people. But Tesla was able to do that. Now, what happened is that obviously in the AC-DC battle, how this could be a battle, I don't know. DC power, direct current against alternating current. To make it sweet and short, AC current can be put into electrical line and go to an unlimited distance away, to put it simple. DC power cannot. DC power can probably go 5 or 6, I don't know what it is, but let's just say a mile. So you need a generating plant every mile for 8 billion people on the planet. You can see how ridiculous it is. Why Edison would get behind that, I have no idea, except the fact that Edison really didn't care. He's just going to charge everybody the money for that and build these millions, hundreds of millions of DC generating plants, which his organization would be more than happy to do. And he would make a fortune off of it, while it's just a stupid way of doing things, very impractical. So the fact that he actually lost the fact that everybody thought that AC power was better was really a given. Now, a lot of people are giving credit of AC, alternating current, to Nikola Tesla, that he somehow invented the motor and the transformer and everything else. This is a complete lie. So it is not true whatsoever. But you got to remember, this is not the land of telephones and internet. Europeans, particularly the Italians, were working on this AC current for a long time, and there were already patents for them there, which Nikola Tesla got a hold of and modified, and also were viable working technologies, plain and simple. as were radio technology, transmission, all the things that he stated that he developed all came from Europe, which he was versed in checking and getting information from, including, I believe, he spoke 3 or 4 languages, which is very typical, particularly in older Europeans when you go back hundreds of years, when, again, you had to travel to places to get information. And of course, everything is very close together. So if you want to find out what's going on in France, well, you pretty much have to speak French or Italian, etc. And I believe Tesla was able to do this, as many Europeans are, and they speak many languages because it's, first of all, they had nothing to do back then. They didn't have internet and TV, and learning languages, which could be advantageous to you, was something that a lot of people did. So it's really not unusual, again. If you have a decent memory, you can learn any language. And a lot of languages are very similar. Spanish, Italian, French are all Latin languages. There's a similarity to them, so it's easy to pick them up. So he was able to get all this information and then put that all together so he could make his own, was it a generator, alternating current generator? I'm not sure exactly what it was, but the bottom line is that invention that he came up and then gave it to other people did not work well. Plain and simple. It was a good basic concept and idea, but it had to be highly refined by people with money and time to do it. Tesla was not interested in refining things. He was a developer. And you develop something and you turn it over to somebody else to refine. Now, I like that attitude too. I like to do that myself when I can. I don't want to get bogged down into the intricacies of technology. So if you have money, that's what you do. Turn it over to somebody that can work in this area, let them refine it. And that's what happened. So his invention, his alternating current invention, which he got huge royalties, kind of unfairly, to be honest with you, because it wasn't his invention, which in the future he would criticize other people that he claimed stole his stuff, when he was really the biggest thief of all. So, we do have to understand these things. And of course, this making him the great wizard is a little bit ridiculous. And all sorts of other things. And of course, he knew how to manipulate the media of his time. And you got to remember, everybody read the newspapers. Everybody was tuned that way, like everybody is now plugged into whatever media they're using in these days. So he was very smart about that and a good showman. And throughout all this time, people want to say he was living in poverty. He was paid a lot of money, what would be considered this day and age to hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a year as a person, and was given millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars in today's money, to develop things. And he never came through. He never finished anything. So he had a great imagination, and he wanted this imagination, which oftentimes you couldn't tell the difference between imagination and reality, to be something that could be physically used. But because of the fact that he wasn't very centered in the real world, he never really came up with anything working models of it. They're all great ideas, but I doubt if he had the capacity to do it. Like all people that fail, well, if I had more money, I could do it. Like we can make better students in schools if we had more money for schools. Well, this, of course, is a basic fact of life to a degree, but you can pour a lot of money into things and get no results from it because the people in charge of it have no idea what they're doing. And I think Nikola Tesla was one of those. But he was able to get a whole bunch of money, and what was very important to them, and of course a lot of his concepts were just plain out insane and dangerous, particularly the fact of shooting huge amounts of voltage through the skies into the grounds, etc. Now this could be very disruptive to everything. This could actually kill all the fauna on the planet and turn the entire planet into a nothing. We talk about Tesla technology when we talk about the HARP program, which are shooting these beams of energy into the atmosphere. And a lot of people claim that this is very toxic and dangerous. And most people consider this very negative. Yet he was wanting to do this, and he thought that he could then shoot a bunch of electricity into the ground. You would then put a pole next to your house, and you would suck that energy up from the pole into your electrical system. Now, people have criticized that they didn't go through with this because of the fact that it would be difficult to have people pay for it. Well, that's really not true either. I mean, you could put a meter on everybody's house because if they're sucking energy out of the earth that you are providing, Just like you don't own the mineral rights. If there are oil underneath your property, your house, most of the time you don't own those mineral rights. I don't know how many people know that or don't know that. So the mineral rights are just that kind of a reality. So you could meter this if you wanted to. So that's kind of a bad. The bottom line is that he never had a working model of this that was in any way possible to use. And the dangers of it are unfathomable of what could happen with this kind of stuff. Shooting in the atmosphere, shooting in the ground. This seems to be insanity to me. You know, the whole idea is that we have no idea. Everybody bitches about, the 5G that's coming out and all the other things, the demon things that are going on. And the point is, we don't know the effect of these. People claim that, of course, your router in your home, this is bad for you. Putting out these frequencies, they hurt your body. Well, they probably do. Imagine if that was amplified 10,000 times. So it is really a serious problem there with that. So he was credited with a lot of things that were already invented by others that he brought to the English-speaking public in the United States, which is very isolated from the rest of the world. Again, there is no transmission. Everything had to be put in a letter and taken by a boat over to wherever. You can understand how slow things would be. But if you were over in Europe, grabbed all the patents, then came over to here, you look like a genius. So he had a lot of fanciful ideas. They were good concepts, just like H.G. Wells did. And people, oh, he must be a Martian. He must be this. How did H.G. Wells figure that? Well, these are speculations that are not really strange. The fact that there would be ships that go under the water instead of on the top, is that really a stretch if you're a person who's trying to think past, or wishful thinking, or fantasy thinking, or possibility thinking, whatever you want to call it? Machines that fly in the air, well, birds fly. Why couldn't humans fly in some sort of contraption? So people think that somehow this is a huge step when it really isn't, if you have a good theoretical mind of what is the possibilities. The whole idea is then to make it happen ain't very easy. So all of this is been, and of course, the bottom line is with radio, which Marconi got a working model to the public first. And, and the bottom line is that's all that counts. Theories don't count. But, of course, if you patent something and somebody else then comes up with the same thing, you're supposed to be able to pay for it. I'm not sure that that's smart to begin with, period. But we could argue that forever. I mean, the bottom line is patenting something and manufacturing it is quite a bit different. Ultimately, it's only workable models that mean anything. If it's based on your principles, I guess you deserve something from it, but we could argue about that for hours. So the point is that he was given, I believe it was J.P. Morgan who gave him a lot of money to build this giant transmitting tower on Long Island. And he then became very upset when Marconi actually did transmit or created a workable radio by transmitting, I believe it was across the English Channel to France, I'm not sure. But and then kept this up. So it was Marconi who ultimately got it together. And I'm sure Marconi did assemble lots of patents himself and used some of Tesla's ideas, but got a workable tool from it. Well, the AC motor or whatever whatever it was that Tesla claimed to invent did not work well. And by the way, there were many of these kind of AC products already working and developed and used in Europe at the time that he claimed he was the sole inventor of it. He patented a variation of an AC motor, whatever it was. So again, it's not his invention. He's modified it to make it work a little better and to be more efficient. And this is so typical. I repeat that because that's very important for you to understand. Now, so I believe it was J.P. Morgan at that time. He's worked with several people. They pulled his funding. They said, look, it's already been done. You haven't done it. This guy owns everything. He's doing it. You did not come up with what you said. The transmission of radio, TV, etc., sending wireless energies through the sky, which basically is what Tesla is being credited for. The fact that this then, meaning remote controls and TV and radio, well, these are other designs as well, which are kind of linked into this wireless transference of some sort of informational field, electromagnetic in nature, radio frequencies, etc. But all this was already discovered and being done, and Marconi put it into action, and rightfully so, benefited from part of it. In the future, of course, the courts did not uphold Tesla. Eventually, they did, and I don't know whatever came from that. I'm not sure when they upheld him being the original inventor, but at that particular time, I don't think that meant any money. But this has happened with many things, where two people are working on something, and one claims to have been over the other. This happened with Patrick Flanagan, the quasi-inventor type, against Andrei Pucharik, who both came up with some sort of, I believe it was something to do with hearing and other things, and moving energy through the bones and so forth. Well, they both had the same idea, and it looks like Pucharik, who fought the Flanagan's patent on it and lost, it appears that he was the one who discovered it, or if any, like so many things, a whole bunch of people discover things at the same time. They're all putting the same pieces together. It just depends who files first, and then who can enforce that filing. So this is what happens with most things, because science really is, in this day and age, very vacuous. And it's all about fighting for some little thing that maybe you can turn into a legal case later. This is a serious problem that we have to be very careful of. Excuse me. So the fact of having remote controls and all this stuff, what we're really talking about is sending a signal into space and being picked up at some other point, whether that's a cell phone, whether that's a radio controlled, because you're putting a radio signal, you're sending that to, could be a toy or whatever it is. In general, transmitting wireless information, which is can be sent in different areas to different things, which is, but most of this is very inferior, which is why we use, in this day and age, everything is fiber optic cables, because you don't interfere with these things. Now, we still have wireless communications, and of course, this is all part of that stuff that was involved by numerous people. The other thing that's come up with him is his actual super weapons, which most of the stuff that Tesla invented, again, was never tested. It was all theories, and he was able to BS people to buy into him. And one of them was his so-called weapon that he was going to sell. Now, the reason why he did this as well is he did have the plans ready to go, and we're assuming they were kind of working, but I don't think they were. I think, again, these are imagination plans. What he was saying, well, here's a bunch of great concepts. It all works on paper. You take and use it. Now, the bottom line is the U.S. military at that time was not interested in it. So because it was too speculative. He did sell it to the Russians. I think this was 1925. And you got to remember, the Russians still were, at these particular times, not looked at as buddies and pals. And they were, I don't know if they were looked at as much as enemies, but certainly they were looked at pretty badly at that time as well. So for a Westerner to do it, it's virtual treason to sell a super weapon to someone else. But the bottom line is that if the United States wasn't interested in his tech, what is he supposed to do with it? Shelve it? Well, he needed money. He sold it for $25,000 to the Russians in 1925, which again must have been equivalent maybe to a couple of $1 million today. You got to remember, in 1925, cars were probably like $500, houses were a couple of grand. So you got to remember, this is huge buying power. So to do that, just for money's sakes, we have to question his morality as well. We also have to understand that Nikola Tesla was quite a strange egg, as they say. He had serious problems with communicating with women, and never really had any relationships of any type. We believe, while he didn't come out to be a homosexual, he did come out to be basically asexual, making statements to either cover up his beliefs or what. We really don't know, saying that women were far superior to him and that he couldn't really deal with it. The character on the Big Bang Theory, that comedy TV show from the United States, the character who couldn't talk to women properly was based on Tesla. We have to understand that as well. So, this is a critical understanding of what's going on there. So he never married. There is no record of any relationships that he was in. So at the very least, he was asexual, if not homosexual. We just don't know. There doesn't seem to be anything that would claim that he was, whatever all that means. But, these make up people's personalities. I don't judge people one way or another on what they're doing. But, if someone comes from a particular part of the country, the world, well, they have a particular thought system. If they are a person who's out of step with the sexuality of society, well, that is a way they're functioning. I think that's a kind of an inroad to understand people. So this is very, very important for everyone to understand in the bigger picture. So we're going to end with part 1 right now. We're going to pick up with part 2.